Okay, amazing. Well, hi, everybody. I'm glad that you were able to join us tonight for this first presentation, kind of coaches edition. This will be the first of, I believe, we'll aim to maybe do three or four between now and March. I am also, as always, kind of open to your feedback and your thoughts, and that is something that we'll be able to discuss at the end of the meeting today as well in terms of maybe what you guys are interested in, what would benefit and help you the most as coaches. So I'm super excited that I get to do this and that we get to dedicate this full hour and a half in presentation to you guys coaches, but more so as well that we get the opportunity to learn from one another. We get to collaborate and you guys get to learn from each other as well as hopefully from myself. And so, yeah, super excited to be here. I am assuming that most of you attended last week's presentation. Was it last week or the week before? If not, then hi, I am Chloe. I am a mental performance consultant. I have been working as an MPC for almost 5 years at this point. I have been lucky enough as well to start working quite early on in my career with the Shooting Federation of Canada. So I've been working with their national team athletes as well as their dev team athletes, some juniors as well. We've been doing monthly workshops that are quite similar to what we're doing together here. I also do one-on-one work and yeah, work directly with the athletes. I was also very fortunate that I got to travel with the team as well. So I went to the 2022 CAT Games with our team, as well as the 2023 Pan Am Games. And I did support, of course, our athletes remotely this year, cheered for them while they were in Paris. I supported from home, but I've been super fortunate to get to learn about your amazing sport and all the different nuances. As I mentioned last time, I am, of course, through working with the SFC, way more familiar with the ISSF events, so with the Olympic events. And so feel free to, even if you are a coach in these events, I'm always here to learn. So feel free to, if you have any tips and tricks or information that you feel would be valuable in my role, I'm all ears. And same thing when it comes to if you are a coach in a discipline that I might not be too familiar with. Again, as always, here to learn from you guys, from the experts, from the coaches themselves. And so, yeah, that's kind of a quick background or kind of presentation of myself. I would love to hear though from you guys. And so if you can kind of write maybe in the chat your name, who kind of the sport or discipline that you are coaching, and also how long you've been a coach. I'm super interested in knowing kind of the group that we have here today. So if you'd like to take a few minutes to share with us in the chat. Again, I went quite quickly over who I am and what I do. If you're interested, of course, in knowing a lot more, then I'm always just happy to have great conversations with you guys, but also feel free to go back and watch the recording of the first workshop. I'm assuming and seeing some familiar names from the first workshop to this one. So that's why I'm kind of keeping it quite short. And I also do not want to talk about myself too long, but please, if you have any questions, always just shoot them in the chat. So yes, I just want to hear and see who's part of this kind of amazing group. So if you can write in the chat again, as I said, your name, your sport, as well as kind of your experience in coaching. I think that'd be a great place to start this conversation tonight. Would help me know you guys a little bit better, but also even other coaches that are part of this group, getting familiar with who they're working with and collaborating with during these presentations. So I'll give you guys a minute or two. Let me know if there are any issues with kind of writing in the chat that I would love to hear and see kind of who's a part of our group tonight. Also, one thing I didn't mention, but if you feel more comfortable just unmuting yourself, then you're all, of course, welcome to do that as well. So Cindy, ISSF 3P, air rifle, students age 10 to 70. Yeah, good. Hi, Cindy. I'm glad that you could join us. I'll give you guys another minute. Of course, this is all something that you can do during our conversation as well. But just I think it's always important to a bit of an icebreaker, knowing who's part of this group. Also, one thing as well, kind of in these coaches edition or sessions, one thing that I really want for us to do is to really to collaborate and to do that through having again conversations and I think having a smaller group and kind of fewer coaches compared to the big group sessions will allow us to have these very valuable conversations where everybody can kind of share their thoughts, insight, experiences. And so I really want to put an emphasis on that during this presentation, where of course I will be asking you guys a lot of questions because I want to know what your thoughts are, but also will of course encourage you guys to share and talk and work together when it comes to sharing best practices as well as sharing insight and experiences. Amazing. So American skied for about 5 years. Awesome. Pistol, very informal coaching to club members, mostly adults. Also PAL instructor. Amazing. Coach juniors. Awesome. 12 and up. Amazing. Perfect. So I'll give you guys a second to kind of write again your name for discipline and then also kind of who you're coaching, but then also coaching experience as well. Yeah, amazing, Richard. Rifle coach and now working with all disciplines through the national junior team. Amazing. I will say I already knew that. So that's something I've been lucky enough to know Richard already. But this is awesome. Thank you, Richard, for sharing. And also you guys as well. Elaine, rifle coach, a long time. Club level, provincial, national, and in national events. Amazing. Well, thank you guys. Awesome. Um, Again, I love hearing from you guys, and that's a bit of an icebreaker for today. But as you've seen from the title, today will be a bit of a introduction, but also I feel a much needed conversation when it comes to our work together in terms of your role as coaches in terms of mental performance as well as mental skills training. So we will be able to, of course, through these conversations and presentations, hopefully learn a lot more about mental performance itself and mental skills training, but also knowing that you guys as coaches have a very important role to play for our athletes when it comes to their own mental performance and mental skills. And with that being said, I also, of course, know that you guys have a lot of experience and some of you have been coaching for years at this point. Some might be newer to coaching, but you all have a great, I'm sure, great understanding and knowledge of different areas when it comes to mental performance, when it comes to mental skills. And so I want for all of us to be able to see like, where are we at? What do we feel comfortable with? What do we know in terms of the roles? What are the best practices? And being able to identify by the end of today's presentation and discussion, I should say, what your needs are as coaches and how I can best support you in that. Because I think everybody here understands and agrees that you have a key role to play when it comes to supporting our athletes, yes, from a technical, tactical, and physical standpoint, but also a mental standpoint and the mental side of their performance. And as we know, it's through working together as IS team members and so integrated support team members. So those are the MPCs, the physios, the kinesiologists, the nutritionists, basically everybody that's around the athletes. There is a lot of value in all of us and coaches included collaborating so that we can best support our athletes. With that being said, though, as we know as coaches, we can also work and train our own mental performance. So please keep in mind that today we will focus on how you can best support athletes. But please note that when we're having meetings and presentations around how athletes can build and train their own mental skills, that this is something that you 100% can do for yourself as well. So regardless of roles and expectations, whether you're an athlete, a coach, staff member, parents, an MPC, we all need to and would benefit from working and prioritizing our mental performance and mental skills a lot more. And so please keep in mind that today we're really looking at your role in terms of supporting athletes, but please know that you're also allowed and also it is encouraged that you work on your own mental performance and your mental skills training as well. Seeing that I've gotten a few more answers, so I'll just go over those. But father to an American ski junior athlete, amazing. Not a coach, but my daughter shoots as well. That's awesome. By very informal, I provide very basic information on fundamentals for people who are just starting. That's awesome. Of just asking things like, have you heard of a natural point of aim? Amazing. Whether, again, we are professional coach or not, whether we are involved with juniors, with recreational club members, whether we're involved with national team athletes, we're all here to, or even parents, we're all here because we want to support athletes in wanting for them to accomplish and achieve their goals. And so, regardless of where you come from and what your experience is, or even what your actual formal role is, please know that this is really the most important part of this conversation. Is just that we're all people that are around the athletes and are wanting to support them and help them work and build their mental skills as well as their mental performance. And so, with that being said, just a quick quote here that as a coach, you must recognize that the mental game is as important as the physical. You have to train their minds to be as strong as their bodies. And so that's from Carla Overbeck, which is the U.S. women's soccer coach, or was former U.S. women's soccer coach, but also an athlete as well. So I thought this just shows, again, the importance of why coaches need to be involved when it comes to training the mental side of the game, but also how beneficial, of course, it is for performance. And so with that being said, I said, of course, today will be very much of a discussion, collaboration. I want to hear from you guys. I think you have awesome insight and I want to know what you think. And today will be all about sharing and learning from each other and our different backgrounds and experiences and roles. And so my first question is, why do you think that it is necessary for coaches to be involved in mental skills training as well as mental performance development? So why do we think that it is not only beneficial, but necessary for coaches to be involved in mental skills training as well as mental performance development? So of course, I know big question here. So I'll give you guys the time to either type it out. If you feel more comfortable unmuting yourselves, then please feel free to do so. We can kind of maybe go through, like you can raise your hand. So if multiple people want to speak at the same time, then we'll kind of go around. But I want to know kind of from your own experience, your knowledge, your point of view, why is it so important? Why is it even worth for us having this conversation? Again, give you guys the time to think. We're starting strong here with a question, but I want to hear from you guys. Why is it so important and needed that coaches are involved in that process?
Maybe I
Mm-hmm.
can break the ice on this.
Yes.
And to quote Yogi Berra, the game is 90% mental and the other half is physical.
Mm-hmm.
And I was shooting a friendly match last night
Yes.
and I had a complete brain fart, lost concentration for a fraction of a second, and completely missed the paper.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you've got the basic physical skills, particularly with shooting, it's
Yes.
all about acquiring and maintaining your focus for the 5, 10, 20 seconds that you need to maintain that focus. And
Mm-hmm.
to me,
Mm-hmm.
that's entirely a mental skill training.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. 100%. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you for sharing. And where do you see kind of maybe a coach's role in that? So let's say there was a coach, maybe either you have a coach or as a coach yourself to athletes that would be experiencing something similar. Why do you think it'd be important for the coach to be involved?
Depending on the athlete, they
Mm,
may or may not be able to recognize for themselves what happened
yeah.
and
Yes.
to help talk them through what to do about it.
Mm-hmm. 100%. Awesome. Yeah. Sometimes we might not recognize it, right? Or again,
Yep.
talking things through, having somebody to have this like conversation with can be really, really helpful, especially when we're talking younger athletes. But I would say any age, any level, there's a lot of value in having these
Yeah.
conversations where somebody can share their observations as well. Amazing. Thank you. Awesome. And I do see that we have a few answers coming in the chat as well. So the physical skill is typically the easy part of a sport. Keeping the mind focused and level can make or break an athlete's performance. Amazing. The students may not understand why they feel the way they do or have the tools yet to deal with certain situations. So the coach is there to help guide them. 100%, right? So of course, as a coach, you have seen, experienced yourself, or have seen other athletes maybe having similar challenges or struggles, or and have tools that you can help your athletes with. So they might not know or understand what they're going through. And so by sharing it with you and as a coach, and kind of being equipped and having the information, the knowledge, and the skills, you can therefore help the athletes and guide them in their mental performance or mental skills training. Amazing. Anybody else would like to jump in and answer this question as to why do we think it's important for coaches to be involved in mental skills training as well as mental performance development?
Well, I think one thing, Chloe, it's really important
Mm-hmm.
that if we understand what our athletes need in terms of help with their mental performance, it's a big help. I
Mm,
think it also helps us stay calm because it's really easy. I've seen this over the years to see coaches actually project their anxiety to the athlete.
mm,
And I think
mm-hmm.
if we understand what the athlete's going through, it helps us calm the athlete down and not
Yes.
not share our anxiety.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, because of course, coaches are humans too, right? And so you're going to go through different highs and lows and different emotions, and you're going to feel stress and anxiety and excitement and frustration. And so by being involved in your athlete's mental training, therefore you're aware of what they need, what's helpful, what's not helpful, what's going through their mind, how they're feeling. And so therefore it's going to help you as well, being able to kind of navigate that a bit better, but also in terms of your own coaching, maybe make some changes or maybe work on your own mental performance yourself so that you can best support your athletes in those moments. Amazing. Thank you, Richard. They see here, of course, that external stressors can have an impact on performance without it being a conscious weight. Getting too hyper or too loose in their focus will alter their reaction times and thought process. 100%, right? So I think we all agree that mental performance and mental skills will have a critical impact on overall performance, right? And it is, of course, um, why as coaches, when we are able to either make observations or when we are able to send reminders or when we are able to educate or help or guide our athletes when it comes to their own mental performance, we are also therefore helping them achieve their performance goals. We often, of course, see coaches focus on the technical and the tactical aspect of the game, which is, of course, their expertise. But with that being said, we do not want to forget about the mental side as well, because we as coaches have access to our athletes way more often sometimes than even other professionals will. We know them a lot better. We know what they might need. We know what their game plans are, what their goals are. And so therefore we are in a position to be able to help them and their performance. And so here are a few things just to kind of think about when it comes to why the coach's involvement in mental training is necessary, right? It is not it would be nice if it is necessary if we want to see our athletes grow and but also thrive in their sport and achieve their goals. So for one, coaches are daily influencers. And I know daily here might be we may need to be a bit more flexible with that. I know some of you may not have access to your athletes on a daily basis, but you are with the athletes way more often than any other professional, whether you're there from a coaching capacity, whether you're shooting with them, whether it's just you being at the club, whether it's again a parent, you are with the athletes way more often than any other professional, right? And so if mental performance was to say only fall on the kind of the MPC's lap, then our athletes would be very limited when it comes to growth, because even if we are, let's say, thinking that some of your athletes only have access to these types of meetings, and not saying that they do, hopefully they have great support, but basically it's one, maybe two meeting a month, right? That is very limited when it comes to the impact, but also when it comes to the reminders that or even just when it comes to prioritizing mental performance, right? So you guys being with the athletes, whether every day, every week, every month, allows you to be, of course, in contact with them, to give them reminders, but also to share your observations as coaches, as parents. You are then able to, of course, take a step back. You're not the one performing yourself or training yourself. And so therefore you are able to kind of see maybe things that the athletes themselves aren't. And sometimes, again, as we mentioned before, especially when it comes to maybe sometimes juniors or people that are newer to the sport, where it is harder for them to recognize what they're going through, how they're feeling, what they're doing. Having somebody there with you that can share their observations will be very beneficial. Same thing, of course, when it comes to different evaluations, when you're doing different drills, when you're doing match simulations, or when you're at an actual match, you're there with the athletes. And so therefore you have direct access to them. And that means more opportunities to train and prioritize mental performance. As coaches, you often set the tone for progress and growth, right? The way you approach things, the way you talk, the words that you use will have a direct impact on the athletes. And so, of course, if the one person that I get to see the most in my sport is my coach, and they keep reminding me of key mental performance concepts, or they keep kind of going back to maybe something that we've talked about in a presentation before, or they keep just talking to me how important it is to prioritize mental health, well-being, and mental performance, then of course your athlete's gonna probably go with that and align with that, and will want to, of course, prioritize mental performance themselves. And because you're there and in the environment, you can also do like immediate reinforcement of mental skills, right? Of course, you can share your observations, but also you can see and monitor growth. You can share with them right away. If you're if you're seeing something, you can also ask questions that would lead to immediate reflection. And so, of course, you guys are there with the athletes, maybe not daily, maybe some of you are, of course, depends on which kind of the capacity is in terms of our coaching, but you're with the athletes way more often than a lot of other people are, sometimes even their spouses or families or friends. And so you will have, of course, a direct impact on their mental training. When it comes to trust and relationship, often, and we always want to believe that that is the case, or also, if not, work towards that. But athletes have a lot of trust in their coaches, right? Often you work with people that you trust, that you enjoy their company, and that you feel will help you be at your best. And so therefore, your athletes trust you, and they may open up to you a lot more than they would anybody else, which gives you access to a lot more information. And therefore, you are in a position to help, to support, to guide, to offer insight, to share with them resources. Basically, because they trust you, they will open up to you. As I said, if that is not the case, then the goal is to work towards that. But we will say, in general, what we're hoping for is to have a great, trusting working relationship with your coaches, for the athletes to have that with their coaches. And so they will open up to you a lot more than sometimes they would at home, again, or that they would with somebody they don't really know. Even when it comes to, again, a setting like this, where it is a group setting, you have to share it in a group chat or mute yourselves. Athletes might not open up as much compared to a one-on-one conversation with their coach. So because you have access to more information, then you're in a position to help. you can also, in your role as a coach, you can help normalize mental training. And so we know that there's a lot of stigma when it comes to mental health, mental training, anything that has to deal with the psychological and well-being side of everything. I would say sport, but I think in general, right? For a long time, it was seen as maybe being weak, having to ask for help. Um, and of course, a lot of people still believe that when it comes to mental health, when it comes to reaching out and seeing a therapist, a psychologist, psychiatrist, right? And but there's also that belief in sport as well. And so when the coaches help normalize, but not only normalize, but encourage their athletes to prioritize their mental health, their well-being, but also their mental training from a performance standpoint, then of course that message is then shared from somebody that you trust and will therefore, of course, then the athletes will probably align with that as well. We've seen, and I've seen as an MPC, that when the coaches buy into what we're doing and they believe in kind of my field and our approaches and our interventions, it can do wonders for athletes. I've also been in situations where if a coach thinks that this is a waste of time or that we shouldn't prioritize mental training, that other things are more important, that this is just a if we have the time type thing, then so do the athletes. It really does come to the coach. A lot of your athletes, juniors or not, will look up to you or will trust you. And so if you say this is something that will be beneficial, this is something that is helpful, then they will want, of course, to trust that or at least being willing to give it a chance. And so very important for coaches to be involved and to share and normalize mental training so that we have access to the athletes and can help them in terms of improving their mental performance. You are also in a position where you can create a holistic environment, right? So well-rounded approach where you will put importance on all aspects of performance, the physical, the technical, the tactical, and the mental. And very few people are in a position where they can do that, right? Because, for example, myself, when I work with athletes, I am not the technical expert. I am not the tactical expert. I do have some knowledge in physical training, having a background in kinesiology, but still not my role at this point. And so we'll be able to provide very limited expertise on the physical side of the performance, right? I really stick to kind of my lane, which is the mental performance. Of course, are there questions at times where I ask, why are we doing this, right? What's the plan? Just so that I get a better understanding of the athlete situation. But ultimately, I am sticking to what I know and how I can best help athletes, which is the mental side of the game. Often you'll see kinesiologists, physiotherapists, nutritionists also do that, right? Although we know sometimes certain lines are a bit blurred and we all work together, but they'll do their own thing. Whereas for a coach, you are in a unique standpoint where you can make sure that for every practice, drill, competition, conversation, that you are prioritizing and engaging in all four different aspects of an athlete's preparation. You are, and in some ways, maybe in terms of the feedback that you provide, sometimes in the drills that you create, in the camps that you organize, you are in a position where you can make sure that all four of these things are prioritized because you have knowledge in all four of these things. And it's not to say that you have to be the expert of all four, but you are in a position with having contact with the athletes, with having their trust, and will also with your coaching courses, with your background, your experience, your collaboration with other experts, you are in a position where you can make sure that the environment itself allows and emphasizes the importance of training all aspects of performance and not just the technical, not just the tactical, not just the physical, or also not just the mental, but putting it all together in drills, exercises, questions, feedback, conversations, which creates this really rounded approach to performance that really helps our athletes. And then lastly, you are in, again, great position to be able to, from a performance and kind of success standpoint, being able to promote long-term success by encouraging your athletes to work and train their self-awareness, their evaluation of their performance, their mental health, their well-being, level of fatigue to avoid burnout, to overtraining, right? You are in a position where you can always, through, again, questions, drills, exercises, promote long-term success by helping athletes monitor and see how they're doing from a mental performance and mental health standpoint. You are also, by just being here and by our conversation, when you can recognize that mental performance is a key contributor to goal accomplishment and success in sport, then you, of course, will be able to, again, help your athletes from a really, again, holistic standpoint, and therefore will be able to see huge growth and significant growth and progress in your athletes compared to if you weren't focusing on prioritizing mental training or mental performance. If you were only to stick as a coach to the technical and the tactical, then in some ways we're kind of limiting our athletes. And I'm not saying that it's all on your shoulders. We have to work together, but you, of course, can take a bit of that on and therefore giving your athletes greater opportunities for success. So these are a few reasons as to why coaches' involvement is necessary. There are many more, but you have great contact with the athletes. They trust you. You are in a position where you often can influence what the training environment will be like, competition environment, camp environment, and also you are in a position where you prioritizing and focusing on the mental training of your athletes will also help your athletes grow and progress a lot faster, but also in a really resilient way compared to if you were only sticking to the technical and tactical side of it all. So with that being said, we're, of course, here to talk as well now that we all agree and not that we didn't before, but the why. So why is it important that coaches are involved? It is important to define and understand what are the coach's role, though, right? What is, as a coach, what is your role in order to help your athletes grow and learn from a mental standpoint? And so again, kind of back to the question, but I would like to hear again from you guys. What do you think the role of a coach is when it comes to mental performance and mental training? Or what do you think the roles are of a coach when it comes to mental performance and mental training? So how can you help? What are your roles as a coach when it comes to this side of performance, right? So the same way we would think, well, as a coach, my role is to teach the technical skills that are needed. It's to help athletes with their plans. It's to help athletes grow and learn and understand the tactical aspect of their sport. So what would the coach's role be when it comes to mental performance? One thing that we can also do as coaches is track the athlete's performance to know what their training scores are versus their match scores. So we can see if there's a gap, maybe identify why. Yeah. So we can also maybe put that in a coach's role would then be to track and see and observe where the gaps are, where an athlete's strengths are as well from a mental standpoint. For sure. That's a great point. So again, kind of give you guys a few minutes to think about it, but what do we think the roles are of a coach when it comes to the mental side of the game? Amazing. A coach should be able to demonstrate the benefits of mental training, shut a bad round, not letting it get to them or get overly frustrated or shoot a personal best, but able to stay level for the rest of the competition. Yeah, amazing. The coach should be able to demonstrate the benefits of mental training. Amazing. And thank you guys, by the way, for sharing. I know we're doing this bit in the chat. Some of you guys are, of course, kind of sharing through just unmuting yourselves as well. All's good. I'm just thank you guys for engaging in today's conversation, because I do think that there's a lot of value and we can learn from each other. And I, again, do not want to discount in any way all of your experiences. And I think all of us combined, if we all put our heads to this topic and even these questions, that's where we'll get the most out of this conversation. So a coach's role would be to help build techniques, to be at their best on every day of practice and competition. Good. So to help them build techniques to be at their best. Awesome. All good. Thanks for sharing and joining us, Cindy. I'll give you a few more minutes to think about it. Of course, I myself do have a few thoughts and ideas on that as well that I will share with you guys as well. But I want to hear first kind of what your thoughts are. Amazing. What do we think the role of a coach is? I'm a big fan of NATO. No attachment to outcome. Enjoy the process and the score will look after itself. Amazing. That's awesome. I love that. That's a big one, right? And we can all even say again, a coach's role would be to be able to share some of these tips and techniques and tricks so that the athletes themselves can learn them and therefore apply them and use them in their own routines as well. Amazing. So feel free to continue to write in the chat here. I'll share with you guys what I believe the coach's roles are when it comes to mental performance and mental skills training. So for one, and I think that kind of aligns with Richard's answer, if I'm not mistaken, or comment, is the first role of a coach when it comes to mental training, mental skills, is for one to be able to identify and address mental performance needs. So again, you having access to your athletes, often practicing with them, going to competitions with them, camps, you are in a position where you can identify and see what the needs are, right? Understanding what the needs are either through conversations with the athletes have shared, what your observations are. So identifying and addressing mental performance needs is one role. The reason why these are empty though, is that I do want for us to have, again, a group conversation where I want to kind of know and see what your best practices are when it comes to kind of fulfilling all of these roles. So for one, identifying and addressing mental performance needs. The second role of a coach is to create a supportive environment. You, as a coach, have a direct impact, of course, on the training environment, the relationship that you have with your athletes. And so, therefore, it is your role and duty to create a supportive environment where you allow athletes to feel comfortable asking questions, trying things, but then also where athletes can try new things and train their mental skills. And also come up to you if they have help, if they need help, if they have and are going through any challenges or struggles. Teaching mental skills is also coach's role. And so, of course, we are not expecting for coaches to be experts in any way or know everything, but a key part of a role of a coach would be to be able to teach mental skills, at least at a foundational level. So being able to help athletes learn about different mental skills. Providing feedback is a big one. So of course, through your observations, what you're seeing in practices, what you're seeing again in competitions, being able to provide feedback when it comes to mental performance. Like, I've seen that you're doing better in this, or I see that this might still be a gap, or here are my observations, here's my feedback. So as a coach, of course, the same way you do from a technical and tactical standpoint, and even physical, doing that from a mental standpoint. As a coach, as we said, you are in a position where you have a direct impact on training and competition, as well as camps and drills. And so, of course, making sure that you integrate mental skills with training. And then lastly, one thing that's super important, because I do know that even all these things, it's a lot. I know that there's a lot on your shoulders as coaches, and you are expected to fulfill 1,000 different roles, and I'm adding now 7, if I'm not 6 more. But please know that one of your roles as well is to be able to recognize your limits. And so to be okay with not knowing everything and to be willing to collaborate with experts and specialists and knowing the resources around you if there is something that you do not know. And so with everything that I just mentioned above, please know that it is one of your roles as well to know what your limits are, right? In the same way, for example, that myself as a mental performance consultant, I know that although my expertise is in mental performance and well-being, that when it comes to mental health concerns, I can be of support. I can be there for the athletes, but of course I do not have the right expertise to help our athletes, and so therefore we'll be kind of encourage them and also referring them to the right experts, right? The right service providers. And so it's super important to know you have a lot of roles already. There are 5 here plus this last one that you are and can do as a coach. But please know that if there's something in there that you don't feel comfortable with, or that you feel is beyond kind of your scope or even your comfort level, that there are also people around you to help you. And that is one of your roles and expectations as a coach, is to know when you are, again, outside of your comfort zone, and when you don't know something, so that we can guide our athletes to the right resources. So I would say, to me, these are the 6 key, again, roles that a coach need to have, and kind of that will impact mental performance. So identifying and addressing mental performance needs, creating a supportive environment, teaching mental skills, providing feedback, integrating mental skills with training, and then lastly, recognizing your limits and collaborating with specialists or experts or service providers if needed. And that in specialists could also be other coaches, right? And so with that being said, what I wanted for us to do for kind of maybe the next 20 minutes ish, and my thought is to kind of break you guys into different kind of breakout rooms. And I'd like for you guys to kind of go through each of these points and share what your best practices are, or what is it that you do for each of these different roles, right? And so what an example maybe of what you do, maybe your best practices, what is it that you've done in the past, maybe certain things that you struggle with or that you don't feel comfortable with as well, so that we can kind of, again, learn from one another, and then of course come back as a big group and maybe sharing kind of some of your key takeaways from the small group conversations. But again, I really want to know, what is it that you do right now to fulfill all these different roles? And if there are some that you're thinking, actually, I don't think I do that, or I don't feel comfortable teaching mental skills, then knowing that that is something that we can work on together, and so that you guys feel equipped to do that. But also knowing that even through this conversation with other coaches, you might already feel more comfortable just kind of hearing what they're doing, what their best practices are, what they've tried before, what has worked, what hasn't. And so, yeah, the kind of my plan would be for you guys to kind of have a bit of a conversation around all 6 of these roles and concepts, and kind of sharing what is it that you do to help from a mental performance standpoint your athletes as a coach. So what I'll do now is I'll kind of split you guys in different groups. I'm thinking kind of there's 9 of us, myself included. So maybe 3 breakout rooms. So there would be 2 rooms of 3, and then 1 of 2. If my math is correct, that should add up to 8. And what I'll do is I'll kind of move kind of between the breakout rooms. But again, just having small group conversations. I, of course, encourage you to, if you feel comfortable, kind of turn on your cameras and mute yourself so that you can have great conversations. If that is not possible, you're at work, you're driving, whatever it may be, then of course, stay safe. And also, we want to push ourselves outside of a comfort zone a bit, where we do have to maybe share and talk to people we don't know, but also please respect your own limits, as we said. And if you feel way more comfortable just kind of typing it out and having a conversation like this, just know that that is an option as well. Of course, we want for everybody to feel comfortable. Sometimes, again, there's a bit of challenge where we all strive to just be better. But if it is beyond, way beyond your comfort zone, where we're now would rather just leave the meeting, then please just type in your answers in conversations. So I will do that now. Let me know if you have any questions. What I'll do, and I encourage you now to maybe either take a screenshot or a picture of all these talking points. If you've made notes of them, then great. You have that too, just so that you can kind of refer to all of them. But knowing there's no kind of right or wrong, we're just wanting to see, what is it that you do at this point already? What is it that you feel comfortable comfortable with, what have you tried, and that we can kind of learn from one another. And then maybe 15 minutes ish from now, we can all come back, maybe share our main takeaways. I'll share with you a few of my maybe thinking points and thoughts and ideas. And then we'll be able to also identify what is it that maybe based on all six of these, which ones we want to target, which ones we'd like to work on as a group so that you feel very comfortable, but also equipped to, again, fulfill all these different roles. So I will open up all rooms. It is 2 rooms of 3, of course, and 1 room of 2. I will be kind of moving around, but please just continue on having your conversations. I'll be kind of a bit of a just fly on the wall situation, just kind of listening in, because I always think it's super interesting to kind of hear you guys share and talk. But please just continue as if I am not there, and then we'll come back as a group. So there we go. The rooms are open. Feel free to, of course, take, oh, wait, no, we'll close all rooms. I want to add more time. Okay, so 15 minutes. That's my bad. 15, oh, not 115. Okay, perfect. And then there we go. Open all rooms and we'll come back here in 15 minutes. Okay, welcome back. We'll give it a few seconds. I think the other group's still in the meeting room. Let's see. Okay, I think we're still waiting on 2 people in their own meeting room. There you go. I think they're back with us now. Awesome. Okay, perfect. Well, welcome back from, I hope, these great conversations. I did, hopefully was not too disruptive, but went from one room to the other. Probably could see my name kind of pop up in there. But I will say again, I really appreciate you guys and your participation and being willing again to get out of our comfort zone, talk to maybe people and coaches we're not too familiar with. I know that we did lose a few people, knowing that maybe we were doing this exercise. So thank you for those of you that kind of stuck around and were willing to participate. Again, I do know that we're kind of creating this maybe new environment to some, but really I do think that there's so much value when it comes to coaches. I would argue everybody, athletes, but I think especially when it comes to coaches of different backgrounds, different sports, to be able to sit together and chat and talk and being able to, yes, be vulnerable at times and say, I struggle with this, or I don't know how to do that, or also being able to share their best practices, like what works and what doesn't. And although you may have different different backgrounds or now are coaching in different sports or different disciplines, I think there is a lot of value in having these conversations that maybe you'll take something away from that. Maybe there's something directly that somebody has been doing that you can start doing with your own athletes or with yourself, or maybe there are some new ideas and thoughts or questions that you now have or are now able to identify some of your gaps as a coach or also some of your strengths as a coach as well. So I do think that, of course, I know, again, sometimes out of some people's comfort zone, but I appreciate the great conversations. This is something that I will want for us to do in kind of upcoming meetings as well, where we get to learn from each other and share. I do think, of course, like even these meetings are long, they're an hour and a half, and I do a lot of talking. Hopefully, there is some valuable information in there, but I also do know that you guys have a lot of knowledge and information. So I also want to hear from you guys, and I think it's valuable for everybody here to learn from each other. And so, with that being said, I was wondering if some of you guys, again, either in the chat or muting yourself, can maybe share maybe a takeaway or two that you have from this conversation. So maybe there's something that when the coaches is shared that they're doing that you now want to try. Maybe it's through conversation or through this discussion you've identified that there's something that you want to learn more on or that you want to do more of, right? And being able to see like what are takeaways or best practices that were shared in your kind of different breakout rooms. So as always, kind of we'll give you a minute or two to write it in the chat, but I just really want to know, again, what are the takeaways? And maybe sometimes the takeaway might be just that you got to know and meet as somebody new, and that is an amazing takeaway as well. But if there's something more specific to your coaching as it relates to mental performance, feel free to share that as well. But I want to hear, again, I was jumping from one conversation to the other, but I wasn't able to be a part of the whole conversation. So I want to know, what is it that maybe you learned that maybe was a confirmation of what you do, something new you want to try, an idea, a thought, a question that you now have, any takeaway from the conversations that you guys have been having?
Chloe, we did have one
Yeah.
thing come up in our conversation, and that is what do we do with our athletes and helping them deal with other athletes or coaches that are disruptive on the line?
Yes. Yeah.
Particularly the shotgun events was kind of where we talked about it, but it happens in a lot of events, and
100%.
everybody has their different idea of how they focus. Some want to chat, some want to focus.
Yes. Yeah. Good point. And also, I think even going back to some of the roles, I think in some ways that might not be kind of highlighted in there, but that's a really good point. Like as a coach, how to deal with that or how to support our athletes when they're experiencing that. And did you guys come up with any thoughts, ideas as to what you guys could do to best support your athletes and these types of scenarios?
Richard had suggested that we, if it was possible, to train with somebody that would be disruptive, very animated, and get used to having that environment, working in that environment.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, right? So of course, as coaches, again, that is something that we can kind of maybe organize or plan, but creating a bit of a simulation, right? A training scenario where somebody is disruptive in training so that you are not experiencing it either for the first time or only once a year at competition, where of course it feels like our performance is that much more important, right? So again, creating those scenarios and situations where we get to experience and train with that. And practices is a great suggestion. I would say that sometimes what we even recommend is sometimes to make training even more challenging than what competition will be. So when we're talking distractions and being disruptive, when possible, I understand that we don't have, again, we have to share the environment, but to make it that much more distracting than even it would be at competition, so that when you get to competition, it almost feels like, easy. I've done way worse, or I've trained under way worse conditions. But that's a great suggestion. Awesome. So when needing to speak with my athlete during an event, we use a bit of basic language. I try to encourage proper behavior on the field. Awesome. Seems like it would be a great way to get the point across from distances you're pros on. Yeah, Amazing. Awesome, right? So being able to uh, make sure that we understand the same language, but that we, again, with time, uh, maybe we make it that much more simple so that we can support and help our athletes while still communicating with them and also encourage proper behavior when it comes to being on the field, being a competition, being just a great athlete on the field of play. That's awesome. Amazing. And so here are some of my thoughts when it comes to your roles as coaches, right? So for one, when it comes to identifying and addressing mental performance needs. So we talked about, which is not written there, but when it comes to communication, right? If an athlete comes up to you, they just by listening and paying attention to different cues, or even with them just flat out saying what they're struggling with, you will be able to really pinpoint, identify what they need to work on. Sometimes it might be hard for you to know specifically what skill that is. But please know that, again, through conversations with your athletes, it'll be possible for you to identify or even address in a way where you ask questions, where you challenge, you provide some insight when it comes to your athletes' mental performance needs. Observations is a big one, right? You know your athletes, you work with them in general as well. We often just through watching different people can sometimes kind of maybe see or guess or try to understand what maybe they're going through and what how they're feeling. Sometimes it might be somebody that you train with that usually is super outgoing and talkative, and then that one time maybe a one practice they're acting a bit differently. Maybe you can see that performances aren't the same at competitions that or matches as they are in training, right? So through your observations, you will be able to see and identify what an athlete's needs are, right? And so that'll be, of course, with time, but being able to see, is it maybe lack of focus? Is it distraction control? Is it confidence? Is it being able, like resilience, the one an athlete is shot a poor shot, if they're able to recover from that, right? And so observation as coaches will get you a long way. And sometimes sharing those observations with your athletes and kind of putting your two kind of heads together will help you really understand this is priority, this is what we need to work on, this is the mental skill, and therefore plan for it and know here's how we'll do it. You can also use different assessments if needed, but I would say as a coach, one of the best assessment is yes, kind of sometimes looking at outcomes or behaviors or habits, patterns. So being able to recognize and see, as we did, we do not want to solely focus on score, and especially for athletes, but as coaches, if you can see a trend, if there is a huge difference between practice scores and match scores, these are important things to pay attention to. And then therefore, with your knowledge of the technical side of the game, the tactical aspect, if you know that from a technical standpoint, things are looking good, from a tactical standpoint as well, then we can also maybe assume that from a mental standpoint, then maybe there are gaps. It also allows opportunities, again, for conversation as to why are we seeing that big of a difference when it comes to competition to training. I would say that when we're seeing difference in score with a lack of consistency between training and matches, there's often there is often a gap when it comes to the mental side, because the technical shouldn't change too much, again, depending on the environment. I understand tactical can change a bit, but often the main reason as to why an athlete will not compete as good at matches as they do in competition will be pressure, confidence, stress management, distraction control. It's a lot of the mental skills. It is, of course, important as coaches to create a supportive environment. So for one, it is very important to create an environment where our athletes feel psychologically safe. What we mean by that is that we are creating an environment where athletes can come up and share with us how they are feeling, that when they are sharing their feelings, that it is received with empathy and care for the athletes. A psychologically safe environment is also an environment where athletes can take risks and try new things and fail and make mistakes. And as coaches, we want to encourage that. It is going to be very hard for athletes to train their mental skills, to improve their mental performance, if they feel they are in an environment where they have to be perfect, where the focus is on the outcome and not the process, and if they feel like they cannot come up to their coaches or teammates when they're struggling. And so it is your role as a coach to create that environment where it is okay, not only okay, but encouraged to be vulnerable, where you are checking in with them, where you are showing that you care not only about the athlete and the performance, but that you care about the person. And that also, especially in training, but even in competition, that it is okay to make mistakes, that creativity is encouraged, that they can try things and get out of their comfort zone, and that they should do so while, of course, always having fun, but that there will be no consequences of making mistakes or failing, other than actually there should be a consequence, which would be learning, right? But that it wouldn't be met with negative remarks or unhelpful feedback, or also an emphasis on outcomes or pressure, right? And so we need to create that environment. We also, as coaches, need to create and foster the growth mindset, where every challenge is an opportunity to learn and grow, where you are not putting, or the athletes aren't putting themselves in boxes, and you aren't either as coaches, where if something is a gap, then that is something that can get better and improve over time. And sometimes that can be harder with athletes that feel like they've been doing, or they have a habit that has been consistent for years, or that they've always done things a certain way, or that they've always struggled with a certain thing. It is very important to always share with them that through effort and work and collaboration, they will be able to improve their performance. And so whether it's very experienced athletes or juniors or beginners, to be able to foster that growth mindset through encouragement, prioritizing, and making sure that you are recognizing their growth and progress and focusing on the process rather than outcomes will be very important. So, for example, I know, again, using 3P as an example, but if you have an athlete that is competing in 3P and in their heads, they always struggled with kneeling, they're not good at kneeling's hard, then what we want to, of course, teach and help as support to the athletes is that kneeling might be challenging, but it is something that they can get better at, rather than just accepting that this is not their strength, right? So again, prioritizing growth, the growth mindset. We can all learn, get better, things can change. We do not want to be stuck in what we call fixed mindset, which would be the opposite, which is that we have certain skills and that's it. You're good at certain things, you're bad at others, and this won't change. It can change, and we can get better, and we are here to help as coaches and staff, help our athletes get better and learn, but also knowing that challenges, setbacks, mistakes, poor performances, they're all opportunities to learn and grow and get better. When it comes to teaching mental skills, coaches can and should teach certain mental skills, of course, based on your level of comfort and knowledge, but you can teach different techniques like breathing techniques, journaling, meditation. You can also teach different skills like goal setting, stress management, building routines, which I'm sure you do from a technical standpoint, focus, confidence. You can teach the different mental skills. You can share and help them understand what you do with techniques that you use, or what you've seen other athletes do. And also just, again, create the space and also sometimes the structure where you will encourage your athletes to build said skills. So maybe sometimes, again, you may not know exactly what the best approach to goal setting might be. I encourage, of course, all of you to get the information, but even if you don't know, sometimes just asking your athletes before practice, like, hey, what's your goal today? What are we trying to accomplish? Then you are encouraging and fostering the athlete's growth in terms of the mental skill that is goal setting. So sometimes can be very foundational, very basic. When it comes to confidence, it could be to ask athletes to make a list of their qualities, or to make sure that you're recognizing their strengths and what they're doing well, right? So of course, there are lots of different ways where we can train and teach different mental skills. But please keep in mind that it doesn't have to be complicated. You just have to make it a priority and be willing to talk about it and bring it up. And sometimes it could be by being super vulnerable and sharing, like, I'm not 100% sure about this, but let's find a strategy together. I've never tried meditation either. How about we try it together, right? Or I've heard that journaling could be helpful. How about you try and journal about this? And maybe I can go and look up a different journaling techniques, right? And so you can be vulnerable and share with your athletes what you know and don't know. But as long as you're willing to bring it up in conversation and teaching, of course, yes, to the best of your knowledge, but also teaching based on actual, again, facts and valid information. And as long as you, even if it's that very little information, you're willing to bring it up and help your athletes with that, then that will be very beneficial. Of course, when it comes to providing feedback, same thing as when you do from a technical, tactical standpoint, encouragements, seeing an athlete's effort in wanting to improve their emotion regulation, their stress management, their focus, their confidence, super important, but also overall observations as well, right? And sometimes that can be this challenge when it comes to mental performance. And I would say, especially when it comes to shooting, depending on the discipline, I myself have been standing behind a bunch of our athletes from the national team as well as the dev team. And sometimes it's very hard to know what's going on in their heads, right? And so we can share with them if we see trends or if we notice, like, oh, I've seen this reaction, or you don't usually do this, like, or even asking what's going on through your mind, but also knowing that there's only so much we can do. We're not in their heads, and still prioritizing conversation. But if we are also kind of providing certain feedback of, oh, I've seen at the end of matches, usually this happens. Why do you think that is? Could it be a confidence or a concentration focus issue? And so sometimes it's by kind of bringing it up, although you're not 100% sure because you're not in their heads, then that opens up that conversation and even for them to have that self-reflection when it comes to integrating mental skills with training. And so that is something that's super important. I will say I was part of a breakout room here where somebody shared that we're basically always training our mental skills. And I agree with that. But I will also say that we can be quite deliberate when it comes to integrating mental skills with training. We can create drills that provide opportunities to either train or test mental skills. And so we can create scenarios where, again, we were talking distraction control, where you add a bunch of distractions. You can create scenarios where the athlete is training in a setting that is harder than what they will experience in competition. You can create drills where athletes have to recognize what is going well. You can train drills where athletes will have to be super diligent with their routines, or where they will have to use an imagery scenario or imagery simulation before they take a shot, or where they have to do breathing or encourage journaling afterwards. And so you can create drills or bring up drills that, again, an opportunity to train. So let's say we're training focus. We can, again, add distractions. We can make a training session either longer than usual or shorter, so that we train in a bit of that endurance when it comes to long-term focus and concentration. And so, again, we can train different skills through different drills, but also test different mental skills. We can also do simulation or match scenarios where now we would score an athlete, you pretend score, you're now behind, you've just shot at 7. This is the last shot of the finals, where you do final simulations or scenarios, basically simulate different scenarios where an athlete will have to be resilient, will have to be confident, will have to use their routines, will have to stay focused. We can be extremely creative with that, but please know that you are training your mental skills just by doing regular training, but also that we can be very deliberate, and also the intention or goal of a specific drill can be 100% mental, right? And so that what I mean by that is that you may come up with a drill or share a certain drill where, yes, of course, they will have, from a technical standpoint, will have to execute their technical skills properly, but the main goal of the drill is to train their mental skills. That is something that we can 100% do, and I highly encourage it. And then lastly, when it comes to recognizing your limits, collaborating with experts, knowing and keeping in mind, you do not have to be a mental performance consultant. You do not have to be a sports psychologist or a psychologist or a therapist. You are a coach, and that is not only good enough, but awesome. And so you do not have to be an NPC. So, of course, always respect yourself and your limits. It's okay to get out of our comfort zone and challenge ourselves and be vulnerable, but it's also okay and important to be able to identify and know, I do not do this, or I do not know this, or I'm not the expert of this, and that is okay. So you don't have to be an NPC. Of course, just knowing how you can contribute is a big part of it. It's also important, beneficial as a coach to know the people and resources that are available. And sometimes knowing, again, maybe an NPC, knowing a sports psych, and just knowing that you can either go to them, ask them questions, which I will be happy to be that person if you want, and answering any of your questions when it comes to supporting your athletes and their mental performance, but knowing the people that are around you, but also resources. Again, you may have very little knowledge on mental skills, mental performance, but knowing again that we want to make sure that the knowledge and information that you have is from, again, valid sources and resources. And so knowing where to look, we always want to make sure that our approaches are aligned with kind of the literature and what's coming up, but also knowing that experience is also extremely valuable. So just know where to go when you want information, when you have questions, but also who to turn to or who to recommend to your athletes if they are struggling with specific mental performance, mental health, or mental skills needs. And knowing that there are other people that are here to support you as well as coaches. The reason why we're looking at these different roles is knowing that you can help when it comes to mental performance, but you do not have to do it all. We are here to help. We're here to support the athletes, support the coaches as well. But just know that you do and can play a role in helping your athletes grow and learn from a mental performance standpoint. And as long as we keep that in mind and are willing to do that, then we know we are doing the best service for our athletes. And so with that being said, I was just curious and kind of wanting to know maybe your level of comfort for these different roles. And so maybe something that we can share, you can share after the meeting, either by email, but kind of all four of these or six of these different categories of just, I feel like my chair keeps going down. Okay. If like out of 10, how comfortable are you with identifying and addressing different mental skills? Oh, I'm an 8 out of 10. So 10 out of 10 would be, I am extremely comfortable, and 0 would be not at all, right? Maybe I'm an 8 out of 10 at identifying, but when it comes to teaching mental skills, I'm more of a 4, right? And so maybe something that you can share over email. Again, want to be really mindful of your time. It's already been an hour and a half. But lastly, one last question for you guys, but I would like to know, based on today's conversation, the why, but also the roles, what would you like for us to focus on at our next meetings? Like, what would be most beneficial and helpful to you as a coach, as a parent? What would be the most helpful? And it could be based on what we discussed today. Do you guys want to know different techniques and tools for different mental skills? Do we want to go over scenarios where you guys can share what you would do if you were the coach in that position? Do we want to do kind of Q&As where you guys come up with all of your questions and I happily will answer them, but also you guys can support each other as well? Do we want to do scenarios, specific skills? Do we want to share experiences or maybe a challenge that you're kind of experiencing as a coach right now when it comes to coaching your athletes' mental performance, and therefore we can all like support and help with that? Like, what would be most helpful to you? Is it to know what the resources are, where the people are? And again, I'm just throwing stuff your way, but how can I best help you guys as coaches during these meetings? What would be most beneficial? What would be most helpful? What should we prioritize in these meetings for coaches, knowing that, again, we might have 3-ish more between now and March? And it's okay if you need time to think about it. That is also an option. And so if you need time to think about it, then just maybe shoot me an email. And maybe that's how we could go about it as well. You can, of course, write it in the chat, but if you want, you can shoot me an email. The reason why, of course, I'm asking this question is that because we can be very flexible, and I want to make sure that we really target these meetings to fit your needs, right? And to see like if everybody here is saying, I am not comfortable with teaching mental skills and I would love to feel more equipped, amazing. If it is just, I am right now, none of my athletes are motivated, I don't know what to do anymore. And so we can have a conversation around that, right? And so please share that over email with me so that we kind of, again, can make most of these meetings. With that being said, though, I know it is getting late. I know some of you are probably just as tired as I am now that we're getting closer and closer to the holidays. And so thank you guys for joining. One thing that I would say, I think doing scenarios would be helpful. It would show that we may know more than we think. Yeah, amazing. Perfect. So I think, again, scenarios where we can either share what you've done before, what you would try, what you would do. I could also share my thoughts. I think that could be kind of cool way of just, again, you're right, kind of either to confirm that you guys, I'm sure, know a lot more than you think, but also can bring up the comfort level, and also create engaging conversations. So thank you for that. So yes, thank you guys for joining. I will say one thing I do kind of need to apologize for is that I've been way behind on emails lately. I have seen that some of you guys have reached out, which is awesome. The videos will be and recordings will be made available, the slides as well. I don't know what it's like for you guys in your profession if you're not coaching full time, but this is a crazy time of year for me, which is awesome. I get to meet with awesome coaches such as yourself and athletes and teams, that I am behind on emails. So please know that I have seen your emails. They are important. I will get to it. I'm just trying to find time to do so. But you will have access to the PowerPoints. You will have access to the recordings. The invites are for this week. You should all have received them. If not, please let me know. If not, then over the holidays, I will be sending the invites for the month of January through March. And so I just, again, need that. Thank you guys for your patience. I need to apologize for some of you guys that are waiting to hear back from me. I will get back to you. This is just a hectic week and time, but I will get to it. But I really appreciate you guys being here, being engaged in the conversations, and hopefully we will continue to have these great conversations and meetings and continue to learn from one another. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for your patience with me as well. And we will, of course, stay in touch. Maybe I'll see some of you on Thursday as well. I do know that's a busy week for you guys, kind of seeing me twice in a week if you want to join, but there is a meeting on Thursday. If not, then happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all of that. And we will get to talk in the new year as well. So thank you guys for joining, and we will talk soon.
Thanks, Chloe. It's always great.
Thank you. Thank you.